Newry, the morning programme, still with you. We have another hour to go. I'm constantly here, God willing, inshallah, as we say, from 7:30 Irish time every morning until 10:30. I have the most magnificent book with me. I have two wonderful people with me. James McAreavey of the Newry Maritime Association and the chair of that association, Michael O'Hare. How are you, Michael?
I am very well indeed, Rowan.
James, you keep well.
Good morning, Ron.
Congratulations on your book, this new book, Waterships and Town, which is a nice play, I rather think, on that wonderful work of literature, Watership Down, and there it is, Waterships Down. So it's first thing to say, James, I've just got the book into my hands. There's a lovely feel to it. There's a quality feel to it.
Well, it is a quality product, Ron. Obviously, we wanted to project a very good image, and I think we've achieved that. The book is it's derived entirely from voluntary effort.
Yeah, I'll reach it across to you, and you may wish to reference it as you go.
An alliance between ourselves and the Community Association in Dromlane, Quayside Close, and then funding was obtained from the Department of Social Development, and the funds were then managed by Newry and Mourne Council.
Okay.
On the 26th of April, as you know, we had the unveiling of the Docker sculpture.
Yes.
On the 2nd of June, we had an e-book launch in the Arts Centre, and now on Thursday week, the 26th of June, in association with Libraries NI, we are having the public launch of this book.
Newry, Waterships and Town.
Yeah.
The rationale behind the book, James, what was the driving force that said inside you, I must do a book?
Well, it's not me that did the book. It's a collective of 20 different authors. Anthony Russell, we were very fortunate to have a man of Anthony's calibre as editor. And he collated the material. We all contributed, and really, Rowan, it was to get a community perspective on what was a great social and economic driver in the development of our town.
And that was that driver was the shipping that went from Newry to the world and beyond. And this is something you, Michael, grew up looking at across your garden gate, because you were down there, Michael O'Hare, down on the Fathom Line, looking out where the big trees used to be and the tanks once were. You were there, your mummy, your daddy, you and your brothers and your sister. You were there, you were looking out at it all.
That's right, it was very much a part of my life, you know, and sort of all of the boats and sort of the whole history, the characters, the people, you know, that were associated with it. And, you know, as James said there, you know, we were very fortunate to have Anthony Russell to collate all of the information, but there was so much history and so many stories that, you know, had something not been done, they would have been lost, because, you know, we're all getting older, we're all in the departure lounge, and once these stories go, you know, it's very, very difficult to resurrect them.
Well, you've done that, and we'll talk a wee bit about that in more detail in a moment or two, but I'm fascinated on the joy of the Fathom Line. I'm fascinated with the memory of summer mornings shortly after the first light of new day, of the boat coming down through the mist. I'm fascinated by the sound of corncrakes in the fields. These are not strange things to you. I'm fascinated by Brian, Captain Brian O'Keefe, saying, when I came back, he said, I went to the top of the flagstaff going home, and there were maids out milking, and I looked back down and I said, what is this? It's wonderful. And I was still rocking from side to side. You know, all of this is part of your growing up.
That's right. You know, and of course I used to walk down to the locks and that, you know, and cage a spin up to Newry then, or whichever boat was coming up, you know. And then of course I still had to walk the 3 mile back home again, but that didn't bother me. No. It was the novelty of getting on the boat and all of that, you know, and Then whenever the tankers used to come in, when they built the oil tanks and that, again, I used to, because the tankers couldn't turn in the canal, they had to go on into Newry and that and turn in the basin and come back. So I used to kids a lift then as well, and then get off them at the locks.
You had a neighbour who was a sea captain next door to you. He was down to the right of you, and Tommy his son is still alive today.
That's right.
Tommy
Terry. That was Tommy O'Hanlon.
Tommy O'Hanlon. Yeah, that was the man there.
His father Terry. Yes.
And you would have been aware, almost the barometer of his coming and going to sea.
Well, not so much, because it would be, I would have known him growing up. He would have been retired from the sea. He was lockmaster.
Yes.
And I would have known him in that part of my life and that the early years and that. So he would have been ashore at that stage. We would have went to school with Tommy and that. We all went to school together and that, and also the Davies as well. They went to school in Newry too. So.
And one of the Davies ended up like myself as a radio officer at sea. That was Hugh.
That was Hugh.
Hugh was with Marconi. I was with Marconi, and off we went. To this day, I can still remember my Morse code, for goodness sake, But James, what you've done in garnering this, what your society has done, your association has done, you're giving Newry back its knowledge of the past, and you're allowing a pride in that past to grow.
Yeah, that's right, Rowan. Really, one of the aims, Rowan, is to try and galvanise a sense of civic identity, pride of place, of who we are, and also to nurture a maritime brand for Newry, that Newry is identified as a port town, which we are. But, that has fallen away over the last 40 years since the port ceased as a commercial entity. But now with the public realm scheme coming near completion, it's almost palpable. You can feel there's a rise in public awareness. People are becoming aware. They're beginning to take ownership. They're beginning to take a keen interest, and if they see something they don't like, say a council proposal about something, you get the feeling that people are about to say, well, what's that you're going to do? Well, actually, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We don't want you to do that.
Yeah. And there's an immediate awareness of empowerment.
Now, there's a great group of vibrant people at the moment, and we attended a meeting the other night, the Newry 2020.
They're great people.
Group.
Yeah, they're good.
With Colombo, O'Hare, Brian Cleland, Neil Bradley, people like that. Vibrant young people who have a concept of how they see Newry developing over the next 5 or 6 years, particularly with the Albert Basin side. And, we're all singing off the one hymn sheet for social, recreational development, a maritime heritage centre, and the Albert Basin is the linchpin right in the centre of Newry. It is the linchpin. Perfect for all that type of development, Rowan.
I see, at Waterford, for instance, Michael, I would have gone down there quite a few times. There's the magnificent, is it Waterford or Wexford? I think it's Waterford. It is Waterford, where you have the lovely quayside the whole way along.
Right along.
You have the railway across the bridge.
That's
You
correct.
come across the bridge from the railway, and then you walk down, and it's just ships and shipping. It lives and breathes the sea.
That's right.
And that's that's what's coming to my mind from Newry.
Yes. And that's really, a lot of places think, that, the pearl and the oyster. In Newry, we have two of them. One is the river and one is the canal.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you went down through towns in England, that they would give their right arm to have what we have running right through the centre of our town. And, you know, it should be preserved, it should be worked on. Newry people have always been sort of known as a proud people. You know, and the most powerful motivator really is give people more pride in where they live, in the infrastructure that is there. You know, that this, sometimes you have to do something before they can see the picture.
Well, you've done it. That's what's happened.
Yes, but
because they've gone to sleep in relation to the canal.
Yes.
And the outreach to the world. They'd gone to sleep.
Yes,
and
but
you guys rang the bell.
Yes, you know, unfortunately, you know, it should have been rang sooner, but that's, you know, it's better late than never. But we would like to, you know, to keep moving and to get, there's nothing that's more powerful than people power.
Oh, yeah.
So get the people behind us, give them a sense of pride and let them see what we're doing, you know. Let us be judged by what we have achieved, not by what we are talked about doing.
No, you are doers. And if there's a particular type of yacht that I would have sailed in many occasions. We used to call them passage makers. You went out onto the ocean, you sailed, and you knew you were going to get there in good time. Because if you didn't get there in good time, you were in peril.
That's
but
right.
you guys are the equivalent on the land of passage makers.
Yeah,
you're doing it.
That's you know, and we get a great sense of worth and achievement out of doing what we're doing.
I want to hear about the book a little more from you, James, in a moment. But one of the, I'm sure, of an evening, of a dark evening, maybe a winter evening, one of the iconic memories of the Fathom Line would have been the lamplighter, the man who came along to light the lamps
Peter Lynch,
that led the boats up into the basin. Now, what were the lamps? What were they fuelled by? And who did the fuelling and the lighting?
Well, the man actually who fueled them, well, they were paraffin oil. There was no electricity at that time on Amyth Road. Even when they built the oil tanks, there was no electricity. They had their own generator. But there were paraffin lamps, and Peter Lynch, or as he was locally known, Wee Peter, or you know, Paraffin Peter.
Paraffin Peter.
Paraffin Peter, because he came from way up above the Flagstaff, and he always carried a little can, a gallon can with a spout on it.
Aye.
And of course, when he would have walked down through Benson's Glen onto the road, and of course it would have splashed onto his coat and that, and he always reeked of paraffin oil. So they would have called him Paraffin Peter.
Wasn't a bad smell.
Oh no!
I burnt oil lamps on my boat, and it was always a good smell.
A good smell,
with the turf and whatever. James, take us through at a canter. Take us through the kind of chapters covered in the book.
Well, we have one of the real iconic pieces there is the memories of Jimmy Hoffey. And many people will remember Jim up in the Abbey Grammar, where he taught geography. And Jim started in the Abbey School 1950. Brother McGee was the headmaster, and he started Jim then, and he retired in 1984.
Right.
And Jimmy Hoppy was born and reared on the Hillhead Road, known locally as Kate Lenigan's Lonan.
He still lives there, in the same area.
Well, his family lived there.
Yeah.
Jim lives on the Dublin Road. But following the reorganisation of local government in 1973, the road was named Hillhead Road.
Yes.
And he talks about the community.
What does he say? Tell us what he says.
Of the Hillhead Road.
Give us a flavour of it.
He
needn't be word perfect, but just what he was saying. And
you know, what do we see now? Oh yes, one of the things that he talks about, Rowan, is one of his former pupils.
Yeah.
Tom Ramsey. Now Tom Ramsey came from up near the Flagstaff, one of the last houses on the Flagstaff Road, and he walked to the Abbey Grammar School every day and walked home. And at that time, shortly after Jimmy Hoffey had started in the school, he had a bicycle, and he told me that he would overtake Tom Ramsey on the way to school. Now, Tom, when he left school, started as a deck boy with the B&I line in Newry on the Inniscarra.
And the Dundalk and the Inniscarra.
His cousin Kenneth Hollywood, who would go on to be a highly respected captain with B&I, was second mate on the Inniscarra. And he got Tom the job, deck boy. Tom Ramsey retired as senior master with Esso Petroleum.
My goodness.
On the super tankers. He was the first captain with Esso to bring oil from the Brent oil field in before Christmas 1976. And he's a member of our group. He lives in Wallasey.
Yeah.
A very, very nice man, Tom. Very much understated. You would never guess, if you didn't know him, you certainly would never guess what he had done for a living.
Of course, of course. The business of going to sea, you spent the earlier part of your life.
I spent almost 25 years
at sea. You were a fisherman.
I was a fisherman.
A proud fisherman.
Yeah.
The shoals of herring.
Well, it was something different. Most people in Fatima and that would have went on the coal boats and then went on deep sea. But I took a completely different route altogether, and I suppose really, Ron, what that was my father used to drive a lorry for Lebetis, the oil tanks.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, at that time, they would have refueled the boats in Kilkeel. So again, I would have caged to lift it down, and while he was filling fuel, I was going for a spin around the harbour.
And you were talking
on
to
some
people.
of the boats and got talking to people. And
you got a berth.
Well, yes, but it was through my father that, because he had said to me, like at one stage, he says, listen, young fella, like, what are you going to do? You left school now, I says, I want to go to the fishing.
Wow.
Now, Rowan, I had no idea. To me, they were all nice little boats going around the harbour, all painted up, looked lovely and all the rest. I had no idea what they were like when they went out through the pier. But I fell in love with it, and as I say, I spent, the guts of 30 years.
Could you tell me how we managed to fall in love with shoebox-sized vessels on a mad world of ocean that's taking us like a tennis ball to the very heights that the ocean can pitch you, and the very lowest that the ocean can pitch you. And when she's going down at the front, the props out of the water at the back and racing and roaring, and you're being soaked, and then you're going down into a cabin that's so... How do we fall in love with
But
such things?
it was exciting. It was that, every day was a challenge. There was no routine. There was, you eat when it stayed on the plate. Never mind the plate staying on the table, but
and you hoped it would stay in your stomach.
And that was part of it too. Like, I remember someone coming with us one time. There were some of the newspaper people and that, and they wanted to come out to see what we were doing and that, and this guy asked anyway. He said, I've never been to sea, my wee bit wary of seasickness. Have you any recommendations? So of course, it was the wrong thing to say to the gang that I fished with. They said, it's just one major thing: never eat anything with sharp edges on it.
It's coming back up, baby. Oh, you dropped your mic there. Let's put it back in there. Just slip it in there. Yeah, that's the job. Hold on, I can do it. Your own situation, because there came a day 25 years ago or thereabouts when your world changed and changed completely.
Yes. I had an accident, aboard the boat, and, in the famous words, I never even heard the bang. My family were going through the trauma for a month before I even knew that it had happened. They had got me, I was almost a month in intensive care in the Royal, and I spent then the next 5.5 months in hospital. Then I escaped, as they call it. You know, anyone that comes out of intensive care, they're known as escapees. Well, I escaped, and they moved me then on to McAreavey and that for rehab. But it was, I realised, I suppose, very earlier on, while I was still in hospital, that I had reached, you know, a fork in the road. And there were two ways to go. I could go down one road and let it bury me, or I could go down the other and fight this and, you know, be thankful for what I had left. I still had a wife and 2 children to think of as well, and of course they were going through pure hell too, because you know, what was going to happen and how was I going to deal with it, how were they going to deal with it. But you know, we managed, we got there, you know. But also I remember saying to Jill, you know, I said, like, if this is the only you know, major thing that's ahead of us, I says, you know, if this is, we'll climb this hill. But unfortunately, 8 years later, when we got to the top of the hill, we discovered that there was an even bigger one behind it. And Jill was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she didn't make it up the next hill. And that was, I found that more emotionally draining than my accident. I think my accident was, it was something that I could deal with myself. But Jill's illness was something different. I couldn't even stand up and give her a hug and tell her it'll be all right, because it wasn't, you know. And again, you know, we got over that too, and sort of I had to carry on the hill, because I still had my 2 children and grandchildren. First grandchild was on the way, which Jill had never lived to see. But you know, life is full of ups and downs, and you know, but you can't change what's past, so you try to make what's to come better.
And as I think we said earlier, we were musing about these things. The timeline is very, very short, from the first moment to the end.
Yes.
It's so short.
Yes.
Blink and it's all over.
You know, and I just wish that more people would realise that, you know. But that's, you know, that's up to the individual. But, you know, some people think they're going to be here forever. And,
no.
And
no, we're not.
It doesn't work that way, you know.
He's a great man, Jim.
Speaking of a blink, Rowan, and we talked about the Abbey Grammar School earlier on, Jim Haffey. Many people recall that. Michael has a poem here.
Yeah.
We talked about the sense of community. Indeed, a lost community. That when we got the Abbey Way, or the new road as we still call it in Newry, it cut up through the heart of the town like a combine harvester out of control, and cut a massive swathe through the town, and an entire community disappeared.
And that's what the poem's about.
Michael has written a poem, and I'd asked him to read it.
Yes.
He read it in the Arts Centre at the e-book launch, and I can only say the viewers are in for a treat.
Right.
It's inspirational.
Michael, we'll bring our interview to an end with you reading the poem. And I thank you both for coming in.
The Walk Home from School.
The Walk Home from School. Have you got it there in the book? Pass it over to him there.
He doesn't need the book.
You don't need the book. You've still got it. So The Walk Home from School, as I thank the 2 men, Michael O'Hare and James McAreavey, for coming into the programme this morning.
Thank you, Rowan.
Not at all. You're welcome. Michael, The Walk Home from School.
The silence broken in Abbey Yard as the few became the crowd. Flights of feathers struggle for height among the pounding feet. Biz Quinn stands in her tiny shop doorway, hoping to catch the remaining pennies like a spider in the web. 3 boys share a fag at McCourt's, a penny each to qualify. McLellan's fruit shop at the corner, mouth waters, pictures in my mind of exotic places. A bell ringing, the railway gates closing at Dublin Bridge station. Jack McGrath's barber sign, like a big screw going nowhere. Don't like that new clinic. I can still smell ether. Jack McAteer puts petrol in a Morris van with a big dinge in the front mudguard. Pipe swings out from the wall. Why does it not leak? A docker with coal-blackened hands staggers from the Dublin house, cursing after burning his nose, lighting a butt he had snigged earlier. Hear the train, huff, 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 run to the footbridge, smoke and steam, my clothes smell. I see the signalman hand the baton to the driver as the train makes its way across the canal on its way to Edward Street Station. Looking down, I see cattle, sheep and pigs in the stock pens, waiting to board the Dundalk berthed at the steam packet, bound for England on the tide. A timber boat discharging timber from Finland. It smells good. Man with moustache is cross as I pick up the scraps for lighting the fire. I escape with my bundle. Coal dust everywhere, the black faces with big shining shovels. The oak must be discharged. A steam engine pushes coal wagons from the provincial gates down along the canal. Some run on and crash into the buffer with a resounding crash. All the Drumlane children turn off for home. Suddenly I am alone. The smell of wood smoke coming from the tinkers camped on the old Greenore Railway. Getting closer, I hear the tap, 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 tap as the tinker puts a new bottom in a tin bucket. Grubby children play swinging on the big wooden railway gate. I see the beaten path up the field to Mickey Moore's well for clean water. The oak catches up with me at the quarry on her way to the Victoria Locks to await the tide. I take off my shoes and socks and feel the warm dust between my toes. A sudden light summer shower and the fresh smell of rain on warm tar as I pop the bubbles with my big toe. Stop at the hidden place for a drink and pushing the ferns aside. It's cool. Lifting down the small school milk bottle off the flat stone, rinse and fill. It tastes good. Mrs. Kelly is hanging washing on the hedge. I say hello. Next, I meet Peter, the lamplighter. He is trimming the wicks and filling the navigation lamps with paraffin oil. Round the corner and home. My belly grumbles at the smell of fresh bread that Mama has baked. A big hug, a piece of soda farl, and homemade rhubarb jam. So good to be home.
Music, sir, please. Thank you.